Ever wondered why your computer slows down or crashes when installing new apps? What if you could master the art of installing and configuring applications like a pro IT technician? In this video, I'll reveal the secrets to understanding system requirements, managing user permissions, and avoiding malware when installing apps. Whether you're preparing for an IT certification or just want to optimize your PC, these tips will save you time, boost performance, and keep your system secure. Ready to become an app installation expert? Let's dive in. Application installation and configuration concepts. It's fair to say that today, most of a user's interactions with his or her workstation take place via applications. Well, in this course, we're going to look at the concepts of installing and configuring these applications. Then, application, it's run by the computer to add extra functions. This allows the user to perform new tasks or use hardware that doesn't work on the original configuration. Here are some examples of applications. We use Word, a word processor, Paint software for added drawing functions, or Google Chrome, a web browser. It's fair to say that the list of applications is vast. After all, there's a huge variety of them. It's important to note that not all of them are compatible with all operating systems, or even all hardware configurations. That's why it's important to know the system requirements, i.e., whether an application can run on a particular system or not. So let's take a look at this notion of configuration. System requirements are a list of hardware and sometimes software prerequisites necessary for an application to function properly. These requirements are generally provided by the application developer. There are two types of system requirements. There's the minimum configuration, which gives us the minimum prerequisites for running the application. And then there's the recommended configuration, which is the most optimal for running the application without any performance limits. This list of prerequisites focuses mainly on 2 points: required drive space, required RAM. If the disk space is less than that requested, then it will simply not be possible to install the application. You'll have to add or replace the existing disk to get the required amount. And if the RAM is lower than that requested in the prerequisites, then the application will experience high latency. You should also be aware that if the system runs out of RAM, it will borrow space from the hard disk. But the problem is that as a hard disk goes much faster than RAM, the whole system will be slowed down. This memory, which is used on hard disk space, is called virtual memory, and you can define it directly in Windows settings. If RAM and virtual memory are full, the system may crash and display the famous blue screen of death. So even if RAM and storage space are two important elements to check, in terms of prerequisites, there may be other elements such as number of processor cores, graphics card power, or even an internet connection. The last thing to take into account is any other applications that may already be installed on the system and which may already be taking up disk space or using a certain number of resources. And yes, because some applications, such as web browsers, can be very memory hungry, or certain applications, such as those linked to the cloud, can take up a lot of disk space. This means that a system can have all the prerequisites required without being able to run the application because there would already be other applications using these resources. Ideally, you should check how many resources you have left in full use of the system by taking a look in the task manager. For example, here you can see that 66% of my RAM is available. This means that if I have 16 gigabytes of RAM, well, I still have about 12 gigabytes available to run other applications. And finally, with all this talk of prerequisites, The most important point to check is that which directly concerns the operating system. After all, some applications only work on certain versions of Windows, others only on macOS, and others only on Linux. You also need to pay attention to the type of operating system processor required for the application to work properly. That is, either 32 bits version or 64 bits. We'll now take a look at an example with the requirements for Office 365. Here, you can see that to run Office 365, you need a 2-core processor running at least 1.6 GHz, at least 4 GB RAM, or 2 GB for a 32-bit system, and 4 GB of disk space for program installation. Installing apps. Let's take a look at the different ways of installing applications. If it's a commercially purchased application, then the software will be distributed on optical media such as a CD or a DVD. Alternatively, you can use a USB stick for applications, which require more disk space. But today, we have to recognize that the physical medium is increasingly being abandoned to make way for direct downloading via the internet. So it's important to know that installing an application involves copying a large number of files onto the system. Well, there's also a type of application that's portable. This means that the application can be opened directly without having to install any files on the PC. A portable application has no installation file. The application is contained in a file or folder and can be run directly. User permissions. Let's move on to user permissions. Whether or not you are allowed to copy files on a system is a matter of user permissions. These are logical rules configured by the technician or system administrator. They are used to control access to specific resources on the network, such as files, applications, or even access to printers or scanners. There is also a type of permission that is more local, i.e., access to files is restricted to the system user. But in general, a classic user does not have the right to install applications himself for obvious security reasons. And that's the last point of this course, with a few safety recommendations. If you are going to install an application, it is important to check that you are downloading it from the official publisher's site, such as the Microsoft Store for Windows, App Store for macOS, or Play Store Android mobiles. Because if you download an application that isn't from the official site, you could end up with malware hidden inside the application you want to install. In this case, we speak of a Trojan horse. That's why you need to be very vigilant about the rights you give to users. Because if one of them installs a malicious application, not only will it be an entry point for the attacker, but also for the company network.